A very good afternoon. Thank you very much for spending your valuable time in listening my presentation. My name is Aslina Siman from Yokohama National University, Japan. Today, I would like to present my research related to quality initiative institutionalization in Malaysia, comparative study between Japanese and Malaysian manufacturing companies. This is the list of contents of my presentation. Number one is the background of the research. Based on Garvin, there are 4 stages of quality eras, which is inspection, statistical quality control, quality assurance, and strategic quality management. Kaizen was introduced in 1950s, followed by other quality initiatives. For example, TQM, it was originally called TQC, originated from America around 1957. And then it was disseminated to Japan, and Japanese companies improvised the concept, and it became company-wide quality control. Once popularized, it traveled back to America and Western, and the terms changed to 2KM. Besides 2KM, there are also other quality initiatives such as QCC, Lean, ISO, and Six Sigma. And this is the summary of the key features of each quality initiative. The quality initiative practices may overlapping with each other. However, each quality initiative does emphasize certain areas to differentiate itself. For example, Lean emphasized on waste reduction and just in time, while Six Sigma emphasized on reducing variation and Six Sigma belt training regime. As for the institutional theory, according to DiMaggio, Powell, Mayer, and Rowan, institutional development is considered among the powerful theories linked to organization studies, and many definitions used to describe institutions, such as the social order that influence human interaction, resilience, and self-activating. And there are 4 isomorphic institutional pressure, which is mimetic, coercive, normative, and competition. As for the research motivation, first is in terms of critical success factors. Despite the substantial effort spent in quality institute implementation, many organizations continue to experience quality problems and fail in meeting its desired benefits. And several authors highlighted that the factors contributed to the success of quality initiative were not only due to technical but symbolic aspects as well. And wide variation results related to critical success factors in quality initiative implementation. Second is in terms of convergent and divergent practices. Quality initiative study should cover other types of organization. An institutional study mentioned that diversity and modification could happen within a stable system and environment. However, there is a lack of study devoted to the instability or failure of institutionalized practices. Beckett highlighted that under certain mechanisms, the institutional practices might lean toward convergent or divergent. And Yang and Kang highlighted that the study of influence of institutional pressure and the dynamic relationship among the quality initiatives have not yet been conducted, and their impact is negligible. Thus, in terms of quality initiative dissemination, some challenges exist in the implementing quality initiative, and Brown-Seidel highlighted that there is less of empirical research related to the driving forces for organizational logics of quality initiative adoption. Further research could examine whether active actors' behavior and support could influence team members' level of commitment in sustaining the quality initiative implementation. And Mutingi and Chakraborty mentioned that previous study of quality initiative diffusion were mostly conducted in industrialized developed countries, and there is scarce information related to the quality initiative implementation. And there is a need to study the variance in emulation, actors, engagement, and installation of the practices both at the sources and recipient country. And for the research objective, there are 3 objectives identified. First, to explore the critical success factors related to quality initiative implementation success factors. And second, to assess the degree of quality initiative installation. And third, to discover on how the quality initiative implementation are disseminated in Malaysian manufacturing companies. And several research questions have been formulated in order to fulfill the research objective. First, what are the critical success factors and how it affects the quality initiative implementation? Second, why there are convergent and divergent between Japanese and Malaysian companies' practices. And third, what are the degree of quality initiative installation? And last, how quality initiatives are disseminated in Malaysian companies in Malaysia. And this is the research scope. Since the research is using case study strategy, I applied Eisenhardt research methodology. And based on Ying, since my research question consists of how and why, which is require no control and focus on contemporary events, case study is the best method to be applied. Besides, it was found that there is a lack of quality initiative study conducted based on case study research strategy in Malaysia. Only 3 case studies were conducted in manufacturing company and 2 case studies in non-manufacturing company. And number 6 is analyzing data covering these 5 areas. Number 1 is history and process of QI's implementation. I had explained the history based on the history diagram, and quality initiative implementation level is based on radar chart. For example, this is the output for JL1. JL1 is Japanese large size company that producing plastic-based product. This company is implementing ISO 9001, Kaizen, and Lean manufacturing. JL1 are having high level of implementation for most of the elements except for KPI, employees' attitude, and employees' involvement. For example, the reason why the employees' attitude score is quite low was because some of the employee feels reluctant and think that ISO 9001 present inflexibility. Second is the critical success factors. From the interview opinion regarding the critical success factors, the factors are summarized and grouped into these 7 categories. Besides critical success factors, there are 4 destructive factors identified, which is lack of top management, person in charge resign, no formal structure, and employees are quite busy and have tight schedule. Number 3 is convergent and divergent practices. In overall, Japanese companies have superior implementation level compared to Malaysian companies. However, Malaysian companies are quite in par with Japanese companies for these 3 elements, which are education, design quality management, and employees' attitude. For education and training, the companies are able to leverage with each other because there is a human resource development fund which encourages companies to conduct training. As for design quality management, the practices are various depending on the products and customers that the companies supply. For example, adhesive tape machine companies have full control in product design management, while injection molding machine companies are depending on customers' drawing and specification. As for employees' attitude, companies do have foreigners and high turnover problems that damper the effort in building positive employees' attitude. This is an example of the within sector analysis for the plastic sector. Blue line represents JL1 and grey line represents ML1. JL1 is having the highest implementation level while ML1 is the lowest level. Among the factors that contribute for JL1 high level are due to top management commitment and proper system with separate organization committees to monitor the implementation. As for ML1, 95% of the product that they are supplying are for retail sector, which concerns more on speed rather than quality. Therefore, their quality management control is not stringent compared to JL1, who is supplying their product to various sectors such as electronic and construction. Based on the quality initiative practices discussed, 12 convergent practices were identified. For example, employees from different departments were less motivated to cooperate with the management to follow the ISO 9001 requirement, and employment effort cannot be educated due to foreign workers, high turnover and communication problem, and intellectual capability of below average. HRDF catalyzed the development of competent employees in Malaysia. And suppliers' performance are closely monitored through supplier audit. As for divergent practices, 6 divergent practices were identified. For example, all the 6 Japanese manufacturing companies have no doubt the power of Kaizen. And most of Malaysian companies implemented the quality initiative in order to obtain their legitimacy. And while Japanese companies are focusing on internalization and HQ direction. And source of knowledge dissemination are different, whereby most of Japanese companies receive direct sources of knowledge from HQ, while Malaysian companies receive from various sources, such as training providers and multinational companies. Number 4 is related to the degree of institutionalization. The degree of institution were evaluated based on these 5 bases. And this is example of the evaluation. The maximum point is 25. We can see that JL1 and JL3 are having high level of institution compared to JL2. This graph shows the overall results. It can be concluded that Japanese companies are having high degree of institutionalization except JS1. As for Malaysian companies, only ML2 indicate high degree of institutionalization, while others generally moderate. ML1 is showing low degree of institutionalization. As for the analysis based on each base, Japanese companies is institutionalized due to the model, regulative, and technical rationale. Some of the companies highlighted the problem in sustaining the culture since they are hiring foreigners leading to high manpower turnover. Number 4 is quality initiative dissemination. The reasons that led to quality initiative implementation were customer requirements, social legitimacy, potential business, and to improve quality and productivity. And there are basically 8 actors involved in influencing the implementation, which was divided into primary and secondary actors. The primary actors are top management, education center, customer, and HQ. And the secondary actors are employees experience, multinational companies, government agencies, and training providers. Number 7 is shaping hypotheses and unfolding literature. Based on the research findings, there are 4 propositions proposed. Proposition number 1 is the degree of quality initiative internationalization is strongly related to the level of regulative imposed internally by the management system. Number 2 is normative pressure imposed by quality initiative entrepreneur is influencing the quality initiative implementation level. Number 3 is immediate supply chain sector requirements is influencing the quality initiative level of implementation. And number 4 is decoupling or tight coupling of quality initiative implementation is closely related to the origin of the driving forces. As for the unfolding literature, I have made comparison with the existing literature. For example, as rationalized institutional rules arrive in given domains of work activity, formal organization form and expand by incorporating these rules as structural elements. And for the research findings, manufacturing companies with higher degree of institution are having dedicated committees and person in charge with higher level of regulative and technical rational base. The migration of TKM in a Spanish electrical company was unsuccessful due to the loss of custodian and entrepreneurs. The S1 and MM2 improvement activity decreased due to the assigned PSC resigned. And organizations are very likely to benchmark and follow their main competitors' successful practices or their near peers' experience. So, for the research findings, some of Japanese companies attend extra length in strengthening the benchmarking and education basis, especially for JL1 and JL3 with frequent information sharing and special education system. So, tight coupling will be successful guarantee if the integration precedes standardization. It is evident that most Japanese manufacturing companies, except for JS1, have a tight coupling between the management system and quality initiative company-wide due to the internalization process. And manufacturing company has adopted decoupling strategies that will enable them to take into account stakeholders' concerns without much changes to their technical core practices. So, for the research finding, ML2 demonstrate decoupling activities for Six Sigma due to customer requests. The Six Sigma program become inactive when there is no customer request. Since ML2 implemented SDA activities, which is something like QCC, Six Sigma can be considered as a redundant program, which is implemented as and when required by customers. And as the conclusion, the research examined and answered the 4 research questions. For critical success factors, 7 critical success factors identified. For the convergent and divergent practices, 12 convergent and 6 divergent practices identified. And for the degree of quality initiative institutionalization, Japanese companies indicate higher level of institutionalization. And for QI's dissemination, quality initiative disseminated by identified ad actors. That's all for my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.